Hey, that didn't come over perfectly clean. That says MSPNP Pro, just trust me, half the O's dropped off. That's not some new letter I invented. So in the past year, we released quite a few new plug-and-play products. Starting off with, we've been catering to the Mazda Miata guys for a long time. We had Gen 1 MSPNPs. We did the Gen 2 MSPNPs, which are MS2 based, and we're continuing to carry that Gen 2 MSPNP lineup, but we've also added another tier, essentially, with MSPNP Pro. That is MS3 Pro in a plug-and-play package. Literally, in any of the MSPNP products, there's one exception where it might take you more than an hour if you kind of sort of know your way around a car to install, generally speaking. And that's because there's a different trigger wheel we have you install also, and it's another 30 minutes. You take your CAS apart and drop a disc in. But generally speaking, all the plug-and-plays, in fact, if you're experienced in it, it's probably 20 minutes to install these things. They plug in, they work, you set your base timing, you throw it on the dyno, and you make your car do as much as it can possibly do. All of the MSPNP Pro stuff gives you full sequential regardless of engine cylinder count for all of the engines that we run them on. Some of the Gen 2s, if it's a 4-cylinder application, it'll be sequential. If it's an 8-cylinder, we'll do either semi-sequential or batch in some cases. But the new products that we focus on this year are pretty much all MSPNP Pros, and that's the MS3 Pro based stuff. So I don't know if you've seen the modularized version of the MS3 Pro board. We designed that so that we could develop these products, as well as so that other parties can develop drop-in plug-and-play type products as well. So anyway, we came back, we refreshed the Miata line. We're carrying the Gen 2s at roughly the $800 price point, and the MSPNP Pros at roughly the $1,200 price point for the Miatas. They vary a little bit for some other cars. We did the 4th Gen Toyota Supra with the 2JZ, which is a favorite motor of mine. The Lexus S300, also 2J. Subaru Impreza WRX from 02 to 05, and we'll probably do some more of those. We're going to work on gaining a little more traction in that market. Every time you break into a new brand, you have to build trust in that, that market before anybody says, oh yeah, I've used that. And there's a whole lot of, hey, if it works for you, maybe it'll work for me too. Upcoming products in the plug-and-play line, the Ford Mustangs from 96 to 2004, we've already got them covered up until then. We're moving that on forward. Biggest challenge with anything, I think it's about 2000 and later on the Mustangs, is the gauge control, so that it works like factory. Because a lot of guys, if it's truly pure race car, they're probably not using the factory gauges anyways, though some of them are too. And that's all CAN communication. So we're in the process of reverse engineering that, and we'll be releasing that in 2016. The Corvette ZR1, now this is a C4 Corvette ZR1. I don't know if y'all know that car very well or not. Scott, is it correct to say it was the first production 32 valve V8? I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Domestic production 32 valve V8, the LT5.
Yeah, the LT5 was co-developed by Lotus. Yeah. So very unique car. There weren't a ton of them made. It's kind of a niche thing. This is a situation where we actually had somebody come to us from the Corvette ZR1 community and say, hey, these old cars, the ECUs are dying. The owners are, fairly well off financially and can afford to buy a replacement product, but they can buy a stock ECU for $1,000, or we can provide them something for a couple grand that controls all the bells and whistles in their cars and gives them full tunability. And a lot of these guys, the ones that play with their cars more, they're dropping turbos on them and that kind of thing. So we had somebody come in. We have a program, I don't know if everybody's familiar with it or not, we call it MSPNP on Demand. And MSPNP on Demand is essentially, if there's a car that you want to see a plug-and-play ECU for, and you show us there's a market. So you get out on your discussion forums or your Facebook page or your whatever, you rally the troops, and you get us 10 orders. That's generally what it takes. Sometimes we have to adjust that a little bit. Get us 10 orders, we'll get deposits. You help us find a car to do the development on. And it usually takes 2 or 3 months unless there's some additional complexities, such as decoding CAN communications with a dash and that sort of thing can add some time and cost. But so anyway, that's how that Corvette ZR1, I think when Scott first heard about that, he's like, wait a minute, why'd you pick the Corvette? Didn't they make like 5,000 of those cars total over 5 years? Or it's a little more than that, but it's not that different.
I gave
But then-
Jerry a hard. Let me speak.
Go ahead.
I gave Jerry a hard time because I was waiting for plug and play LS solutions, which we'll talk about here in a minute. And I said, well, why would you pick the ZR1 Corvette? Because there's so. I don't think this matters, man. Here.
Well,
You guys can hear me,
they're
right? Can
recording
everyone
it.
hear me okay?
They're recording
Okay.
it though.
All right. Okay, it's weird to be talking into this and not hear myself out there.
Is this weirder?
That's a little better.
Okay.
Hey, come here close. No, so basically what we were at was these guys went ahead and did their they did their PNP on demand for the ZR1 community, and had an early batch of the ECUs made. And of course, literally 24 hours after we had a meeting where I gave this whole team a hard time for developing a plug-and-play product for basically an extinct and rare engine, I got a phone call from the chief engineer at Lingenfelter Performance in Decatur, Indiana, at their engineering facility, and we were summoned to bring 2 of those ECUs up to work on what you may have heard about. They called it the LT5 Gen 2 project. Roughly 1991 or 92 era, General Motors and Lotus are working together on a second version or second revision of the 32 valve small block Chevy. It was completely different than the base small block Chevy. Other than having the near similar cubic inches, it was a different bore, different stroke, different block, different heads, completely different engine, ground up redesigned by Lotus. And I have a YouTube video out there. We might post it up here in a little bit. I don't know if you have internet access on there or not, but they had me come in with our plug-and-play ECU, make a few tweaks to match this engine. They went ahead, I guess what happened was GM canceled the program right before they went to run the engines on the dyno. And of course, this being 25 some years ago. So I guess the chief engineer, Graham Behan, is his name? It was on. It's dead. Here, you know what? We'll talk about it later. We'll make another recording. So, long story short, the guys at Lingenfelter were resurrecting this project because 2 of the engineers from Lotus at the time in the 80s and 90s now worked for Lingenfelter. They ran their engineering department, and they had taken with them all of the tooling and castings to put this new second-gen LT5 engine together. And lo and behold, right after I chewed my bosses, chewed them out for focusing on something so awkward, Lingenfelter calls and says, hey, we've got this super rare engine and we'd like you guys to come and put your engine management on it. So I got to go to Lingenfelter, which is a place not a lot of people get to get inside. I mean, they have one of every type of dyno, engine or chassis dyno that you can think of. There's something like 12 different dynos at that facility. They had us install our plug and play, started on the first try, and we made pulls. Now the target horsepower for that engine at the time was 500 horsepower on their AVL dyno without accessories, without accessory drive. It would have read 500 horsepower. The very first pull, it made 501.1. So these guys at Lotus really knew what they were doing. It was a pretty cool story. But high fives all around at Lingenfelter. And then, of course, I get to call Jerry back and tell him, you know what, I'm sorry. But, so it was a pretty cool story.
I like making Scotty.
Yeah, yes, exactly. I ate some crow, but I was proud to eat crow that point. So that was my story.
Yep, and actually that motor was somewhat simpler to control than the original, the Gen 1 LT5. There are so many solenoids and butterflies and valves and this and that and the other on that motor. Staged injection that wasn't really designed to work very well from the factory. It works far better with our system actually than it ever did from the factory. The transition's smoother. Their Gen 2 motor was simplified a little bit. They did away with a lot of the butterflies and stuff, which, man, just finding those things, that motor, I don't know, take a look at one sometime. I promise you all that crap is in there, but you can't see any of it from the top. You're literally looking for solenoids with a borescope under, you know, panels and covers and crap. It's packed in there. So that said, yes, Scott's been on my tail. You know, why haven't we done Ellis? Why haven't we done Ellis? Why haven't we done it? That's because, well, partly because that's his world to a large degree. I mean, he is out and helping quite a few drag racers be very, very successful, and that LS platform is obviously very, very popular. So we took a look at some of the offerings, what Holly had out there and that kind of thing, because that seems to be the name that comes up the most in comparison to us in that world at this point. People are, I don't know how frequent, but every week or two there's a 400 thread long, or 400 post long thread on Boosted LSX on Facebook where people are going back and forth, MS3 Pro or Holly. And the cool thing is, people are making the right decision very frequently. And they're looking at the feature set, and they're looking at the price point, and they're saying, wow, even if the price points were equal, your feature set outdoes them, so why wouldn't I go your way? They also kind of like the fact that we're on their forum quite a bit, and they feel like, they have direct access to Scott, myself, and John, and others that get out there and lend a hand. So that said, we started working on this harness. And we didn't want it to just be any old harness. Man, we worked with a few different vendors. We tried, I think this is the fourth vendor. And most of what we got just wasn't right. For one thing, just getting the wiring right consistently seemed to be a problem for some of the vendors. Bringing out any of the excess circuitry, the way they wanted to do the relays and the fuses in the cheapest way possible. I mean, we just got a bunch of crap, and we said, crap's not acceptable, we're going to do this better. So I'm going to pass this around in just a moment. This is an MS3 Pro. This one's for a 24X LS. LS 24X is not the only harness that's in the works by any means. 58X will be covered very soon with all different injector and cam and crank sensors supported.
I run a MS3 in my Miata.
Yeah.
Got another Miata getting ready to do a LS1 swap in, so I'm really excited to see what you guys are talking about there.
Nice.
Incidentally, it's a 24.
Okay.
Am I going to use the same tuner studio that I'm familiar with to tune?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the same tuning software. Anytime you buy an MS3 Pro, you get a registered license with Tuner Studio.
I bought 2 of those, actually.
Okay, well, you can share a license then in that case. Let's see, I have some notes somewhere. One of the things we did to try to really step it up with this harness is, there I've got it right here, well, thank you though. John's always on the ball. We put a lot of effort into the ground and power scheme on these things. To make sure that even in, hopefully, the idea is even in the worst of environments, or maybe even the most, somebody that has trouble tightening a bolt down properly without cleaning the grease off first or something when they're attaching a wire, that it still stands a very good chance of overcoming any shortcomings in the installation or otherwise. So very noise-resistant design. We've got clean power for all the logic circuitry, the ECUs, and I say ECUs for a reason, I'll get to that in a minute. The circuitry that the power wires for the dirty stuff, solenoids, fans, fuel pump, et cetera, all on a different circuit so they can't interfere with the ECU itself or ECUs, depending on your need. The fuse box is, and relay box is this nice busman piece that we actually had custom made. This isn't one of our custom made ones, this is a pre-production unit. But our next version will be custom made. It adds some keying for the relays and that sort of thing. They're waterproof. You've got 5 relays in there now, 4 relays, 5 relays in there now. So you've got a couple spares for controlling fans, nitrous solenoid, whatever you want to control. And all the fusing is available in there as well. The power feed is designed to go all the way back to the battery. That's the main dirty power. And you'll see the small white wire, that's the clean power. It doesn't take much power in the ECU. But the dirty power, really, that's designed to let you run from this fuse box and relay box. You can run a very large fan. I think we've got 30 amp fusing for the fan and 30 amp fusing for the fuel pump as well. So, and that was sized specifically because we know people aren't putting these on stock cars, are they? I mean, some of them are. But a lot of guys, especially when you're looking at the boosted LSX community, everybody they throw an LSX in the motor. Or I'm sorry, they throw an LS in the vehicle. Exactly, and they flip the manifolds upside down, slap a turbo on it, and if you're not making 700 horsepower immediately, like you're not even playing the game, and 1,000 plus, you start getting into some limited lifespan at some point in the 4-digit range. I think in most cases.
If you're running Holly.
I didn't say it.
It's like a big
we all, I don't crap on other people. Excuse me, ECUs. He might. I figure they all have their place. Most of them will do the job. I guess the question is, will they do the job and do they have the staff to take care of you? So, let's see, I had another note or two on here I don't want to miss, and I keep inadvertently touching my phone and jumping to some different screen.
Transmission control, I think.
Okay, yeah, we were going to talk about that. That is on my list. There you go. Okay, my list is gone. It just disappeared. So, there's a connector on here for trans control that will allow you to plug in a microsquirt that you can then use a 4L80, 4L60, and if you want to mate something else up to your LS transmit or your LS engine, good. We've had success with several other transmissions. We're continuing to expand the documentation and calibration files for the microsquirt trans controller. So that'll plug right in. That also shares in the same clean power, dirty power scheme. That's why I mentioned a second ago, 1 ECU, 2 ECUs. So the trans controller gets clean power, but the solenoids work on the dirty. This sheathing is high temperature, flame retardant. Actually, it's self-extinguishing. All the joints are heat shrunk. You'll see on this harness, there's a few places where we have what look like, they're plastic tag labels, look like flags hanging off of it. Don't pay any attention to those. Pay attention to the ones that are wrapped around all nice and neat, because that's how all of them will be when we go to the final production, which is very, very soon. All the connectors are OEM, there's no knockoffs. Basically, we don't cut any corners. The price, I don't want to be the lowest in the game. You know, you ever get a quote on something, house, work, or something, and you pick the lowest price every time? You probably don't pick the highest price either. I think you pick where the value is, where you know you're going to be taken care of. That's the part. That's the people that we want to reach out to. If you don't want the cheapest in the world, you've probably got other options. So, with that said, I will pass this around and continue on through. 5-minute buzzer, man, I'm going to have to talk quick.
Actually,
Would y'all like to,
6 minutes, I'm sorry.
if you'll rather, I'll just set this up front and you can take a look later. But.
My iPhone says 6.
All right, so, okay, 6 minutes. I just got an extra minute.
That's fine. Half the time, yeah, even half.
So, Amplify clinics, real quick. I don't know if you've heard anything about those or not. We promoted them quite a bit in the last few months. We've done one that was very, very early on. We weren't even calling it an Amplify clinic yet. It was kind of exploratory. And Scott taught that. And then we did another one just, 2 months ago. And we had 25 people. This is absolutely the most hands-on training you'll ever see, or that I've ever seen, for fuel injection, period. This has really got the kind of factory MS3 Pro oriented training aspect to it. And what we do is we put you in a room with an engine dyno and a chassis dyno. Engine dyno has an engine on it with, it's fully instrumented, MS3 Pro, 8 individual O2 sensors, the works. Now, this plan may be modified a little bit going forward, but this is the way we did it this time around. We're kind of still figuring out how we move forward exactly. But we also had the engine, so the engine dyno was fully outfitted. We had a chassis dyno with a car on it, also MS3 Pro. 20 guys, or 25 guys. 28. I don't even know, gosh. Hey, where'd the rest of the money go? No, I'm just kidding. And we had each station, so 2 students would share a station with their laptops that they bring. And they plug into an MS3 Pro at their desk live with a pair of stimulators. We built custom adapter harnesses over to it. And they go through a class with Scott and an assistant.
Sure. So what we did was the first course curriculum. Yeah, I'll go quickly. So each pair of students. This is for the recording, right? Yeah. All right. So each pair of students had an engine simulator, a GymStim X with a custom harness for an MS3 Pro. What we did was we spent the first, maybe 2 hours of the first day getting everybody's ECU configured for the engine that was on the engine dyno. The goal of the program was for you to be able to take an ECU out of the cardboard box, out of the packaging, and end up with a running engine and have a running start for being able to tune. So I focused less on injector characterization and tuning theory and more on hands-on practical application for your ECU, so that either a dealer could help a dealer tech could do their installations, or an individual could do the installation himself and be comfortable that that he could take this system for the first time and actually end up with a running engine. Well, so we sent the guys 2 teams, 4 students, at a time into the dyno cell and the engine dyno. They took their ECU that they pre-configured. We didn't give them configuration settings that would run the engine. They had to all do it through the class, through the learning process. And they'd plug in their ECU, they'd run through all the output checks. They would fire, it was a coil pack engine, make sure that all the ignition was wired in the right firing order, make sure that the engine, or the injectors were sequentially in the right order, and then they would take it to the point where they started the engine. That was the first day. Second morning, we had 2 dyno sessions for each team that we'd rotate in and out, and they would then get the engine started, tune their idle, part throttle tuning steady state, and then wide open pulls through the end of the second day. And then we had, basically in between, we would take time on the chassis dyno and go over things like transmission controls, the different aspects of tuning, drivability, cold start, that kind of thing. So we had really good feedback from that, and very shortly we will be announcing other locations and dates here in the next, that we'll be starting over this winter, it sounds like. So,
Yeah.
yes. DIYAutotune.com/EFI clinic. That's where all the information is going to be, and also if anybody's on Facebook, just hit me up, Scott Clark. I will make sure we post up there as well.
Hey
Thanks,
Scott,
Yes.
hey, these guys that you help take an ECU out of the box and install an engine themselves, what percentage of them were able to start and tune the engine themselves?
Oh, 100% success rate on first start try back on the engine dyno. So every single team that went back there, first time they hit the starter, the thing started right up. So
Thank
seemed
you.
to work.
Awesome.
You got the 1 minute bell?
I probably have a 1 minute bell. So real quick, I just wanted to also call out some of the successes our customers have had in 2015. I mean, we've got a tiny number of them chronicled here, but it's a long list, and we won't have time to go through all of it now. Maybe I can set this slide on rotate later, and y'all can take a look if you'd like. Drag Week, we've had a big involvement with for years. This year, we were well aware that Doc McIntyre was going to be there. He ended up winning Pro Street NA and setting the fastest NA pass ever.
NA being naturally aspirated. So basically, the guy on the top there, the red car you're looking at, is that would be the quickest all-motor or naturally aspirated street-driven car in the world, right there.
Yeah.
And it's right on the cusp of high 7-second quarter miles, and they drove that thing 1,400 miles all week long.
Yeah.
Getting just under 10 miles per gallon with a 673 cubic inch, all aluminum billet Hemi.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Jay Brown's car, that Shelby clone, he has an MS3X in that. He won his class. Matt Velasco was dominating in a very, very competitive class, and actually ended up with the fastest pass in that class of the event, but his transmission came apart in the middle of the event, so he didn't
Not our
finish.
problem.
They tried to blame it on the ECU, but
Reduce
no.
the power and those things don't happen.
Solo Nationals this year, we dominated like two number 1 spots and 2 different categories, and then like a 2 and a 3. Eric Anderson, Russ, who's hiding back there, tuned his car, did an amazing job. That car is a beast. It's actually the first time of as many Miatas as you see in autocross. It's the first time a Miata's ever won Solo Nats, or SSM and Solo Nats. Thank you.
RX-7's winning.
Thanks for not letting me say anything too goofy. You know, and not running the pro stuff, we got MS2, MS3X, MS1, MS2s. Again, Blasco was an MS3 Pro, Jay Brown was an MS3X. So, you know, some of these guys are doing this on the super tight budget, some of them are spending a little bit more, and some of them are going straight for our pro solutions, and it just depends on what you want. My car, 240SX, land speed stuff. Bonneville keeps crapping out on me. I've been trying to go for 3 years now. I spent a couple years building the car.
They know you're gonna come. That's
They
why
are
they-
scared, and the record, I don't want to be too cocky. I feel confident though. The record out there is 207 miles an hour. I got 5 miles to do it. Since I couldn't go west, I pointed my rig north and we went up to Ohio. We now have 13 records up there, and the fastest is 217 miles an hour. So 217 miles an hour in a mile. I got 5, I got to get over 207.
Think he'll do it?
It's a little slicker out there, but if the salt comes back to me, please, we should have some fun out there.